Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Bole Shri Sadgurunath Maharaj Ki Jai. Hari Om. Welcome to the 9th episode of Chinmaya Yoga. Today's topic is As We Think, So We Become. We are looking into Gurudev's, Puja Gurudev Swami Chinmayanandaji's book, Hasten Slowly. And in Hasten Slowly, Puja Gurudev talks about, last week we saw about Abhyasa. Abhyasa is, one minute. Yeah. Abhyasa is about constantly practicing again and again on one topic that we need to focus on. And Vairagya is letting go of what we do not need, what is not going to aid us in our spiritual progress. So Gurudev says, as we think, so we become. There are many lines in Sanskrit. Yad bhavam tad bhavati. Whatever is our state of mind, that we become. Yadrishi bhavana yasya siddhir bhavati tadrishi. So as we think, so we become is a very relevant and valid statement declared by the closest students of man and his behavior. The attempts of a meditator are to revolutionize the structure and functions of his mind. This is the inner content of all effective streams for taming the mind. The thought with which we ardently feed our conscious mind slowly seep through its various layers to influence its influence by his physical surroundings consisting of objects and by his mental environments provided by the type of ideas suggested to his mind from outside. We are generally unconscious of this inescapable field of influences that always surround us. So one thing as practitioners of yoga or meditation should be careful of is constantly there is an input from the surroundings through objects, people, situations, through what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we smell, and what we touch. We are constantly being fed with information, and that information is percolating and penetrating into our through our conscious mind into the subconscious mind, and with lack of awareness and lack of sadhana, it enters into the unconscious mind and it becomes a program with which our future action is guided. Constantly, our future action is modeled and shaped through these influences and through these impressions that we receive on a day-to-day basis, 24/7, 365 days a year. Naturally, the rude, the vulgar, the sensuous, the lusty, the selfish, the immoral, the crude, all are mentally breathed in during our day's transactions in life. It is only in the very rare minds of alert seekers and strong personalities that there is anything like a safety mechanism at work to resist, if not actually to reject, other baser contagions. So we need to be very alert and very conscious about what is the surrounding atmosphere around us, what we are receiving as our inputs. So when we tidy up our home, or when we have our office space tidy, so that is why even in the Bhagavad Gita, The process for meditation mentioned in chapter 6 talks very elaborately about how we should keep our meditative space neat, clean, and tidy, and how we should seat the seat of meditation should not be too high, not be too low. We should see to it that it is a very quiet and neat corner where there are no tiny insects going, or where there is no dust, or where it is on level with the ground, so that in deep states of meditation there is neither the fear of falling, um, because the fear of falling itself, even if we may not fall, the fear of falling will not allow our mind to go deeper into meditation. So this is our surroundings. In the world, a man is immediately estimated by his action only. It is the intelligent critics who will evaluate a person by his feelings, and the rare few intelligent ones alone can truly judge a person and his character with a correct insight into his thoughts and motives. So as we think, so we become. Yad bhavam tad bhavati. As I've mentioned earlier, the primary motivation for the way we feel and the way we think is the value that we give to anything. If I give value for something very great, like practicing yoga, doing sadhana, if I give it very high value or high priority in my life, that value will guide my attitude. The attitude is nothing but the posture of our body. The body is like an antenna for a television program, or an antenna to receive signals, telecommunication signals. When the signal is coming in one direction, the antenna has to be receptive to that, facing that in that particular position, ready to receive. If the antenna is not facing in that direction, the signals, even though they are coming, they will not come. In the same way, the body is the antenna, and the antenna is positioned in a particular way because of the importance we give to something. The value and importance we give to an object, a person, or a situation decides the attitude that the body has. When the body is positioned in the right attitude to receive signals of grace, to receive signals of meditation, to receive signals of sadhana, then the necessary feelings are generated within the body. When the necessary feelings are generated, we get the right kind of thoughts that aid those feelings and sustain that attitude and sustain and reinforce the values. And the feelings give rise to thoughts, and then thoughts give rise to words, and words give rise to actions. So the counter situation is actions are caused from words, words come from thoughts, thoughts come from feelings, feelings come from our attitude, and the attitude comes from the value or importance that we give to something. So this is the cycle of yoga. This is a cycle of conscious practice of yoga. Yad bhavam tad bhavati means whatever feeling I have, that feeling is reflected in my situation in life. My situation in life, the future of my life is constantly molded by the feelings that I entertain in the present moment. Every moment in the present moment, the kind of feelings that I have, the kind of thoughts that I have, constantly keep reframing the future developments in my life. So what is it? If I want success, that is why even in the Vedas, it is not said anywhere in the Mahavakyas that you will become. It says, Aham Brahma Asmi, I am Brahman. Tattvam Asi, you are that Brahman. I am Atma Brahma. This Atman is Brahman. Right now it is Brahman. It is not going to become Brahman at any point of time. This Atma is Brahman. Prajnanam Brahma. The consciousness with which I am looking into the thoughts, the words, the actions, the feelings, the attitudes, and the values that I have, that consciousness which is aware of all this right now is Brahman. So this is what it means, Yad Bhavam Tad Bhavati. As I feel, so it really becomes. To a student of meditation, therefore, Gurudev says, the teacher lovingly points out and tenderly insists upon the need for frequent retreats, daily contacts with inspiring people, there is satsanga, daily study of the scriptures, together therein a refreshingly rejuvenating feed of ideas with which to nourish the mind. These are the essential items of practice in a day-to-day life of a sincere aspirant to meditation. So how do we get these feelings? How do we get these? It is not so easy to get the right kind of feelings that we want. The right kind of feelings that we really need to help us in our sadhana is generated by the company we keep. There is a proverb in English, you are known by the company you keep. Tell me your friends and I will tell you. So that is what it means by satsanga. We surround ourselves by people who are aspiring for the same goal that we are aspiring. So constantly they are reminding us through their words, through their actions, through their behavior, through their attitude. They constantly remind us of what we need to do right now. And not only that, even when we are going away from the path that we have chosen, they constantly remind us to come back on the path through their words and actions. When thus the conscious outer surface of the mind is made to play in the company of such ideas in holy surroundings, their transforming slowly drips down to water the lower layers of the subconscious and finally get percolated even to enthrall the unconscious levels of the mind. So this is seen in our daily lives as a rishi. As a wise man intensively lives a life of study and good companionship of other wise men in his waking hours, so too will be his dream world full of discussions with wise men, whatever the mind takes up with intense ardor, anusangena, that would determine the type of experience invoked by that mind in its life outside. Hence we have the saying, mind is the man. The Amrita Bindu Upanishad says, Manayeva Manusyanam Karanam Bandha Mokshayoho Bandhaya Vishaya Saktam Muktam Nirvishayam Manaha. So does the Yoga Vasishta also say this. Mind is man. The mind is responsible for bondage and for liberation. What is bondage? When I'm compulsively meant to do something, when I'm compulsively made to do something, which whether I like it or I don't like it, if I have to do something, then I'm in bondage. And what is the cause for that bondage? The mind is the cause for the bondage. What is the mind? The mind is consciousness plus object. And what is object? There are only 5 objects. Objects of sight, objects of sound, objects of smell, objects of taste, objects of feeling, touch. These are the 5 objects. And when they join with our perception, it becomes a mind and it causes a series of thoughts to flow in us, thoughts to be generated in us. And these thoughts are the cause for our bondage and the cause for our liberation. So what is bondage? When I'm attached to an object, that is bondage. And when my mind is free of all those thoughts, it is called liberation. So that is what even in the Yoga Sutras, it is said, Yogaha Chitta Vritti Nirodhaha. Chitta means mind, Vritti means movement and agitation of mind. When there is no movement and there is no agitation of mind, it is called yoga. So in that state, how am I? I am the observer of what happens around me. I am the observer of what is spoken. I am the observer of what I see. I am the observer of what I taste, what I smell, what I touch, and what I think about. Being an observer means I am not a participant. I am not enthralled by it. I am not irritated by it. I am not stung by it. I am not disturbed by it, but I am just watching. So that is a state of yoga. If I am not an observer, vritti sarupyam, what happens? Vritti sarupyam itaratra. I become involved in the thought. I become involved in the feeling. I become involved in the emotion. I become involved in the words. I become involved in some other attitude which is not mine. I become involved with some other values in life. And when I become involved, I lose consciousness of my own presence, my own person, which is watching and which is observing. And I get involved with the what is being observed, and that is called bondage. Bondage is being vritti sarupya, meaning I enter into that movement and I become part of the movement. When I am staying outside a house, I can observe the whole house. But the moment I enter into the house, I cannot observe the house in its entirety, but I will be molded by what is happening inside the house. The programs that are happening, the people, what they say, their points of view, their minds, their attitudes, their behavior, the television that is going on inside, or the mobile phone that is ringing inside the house, I will get caught in its interior and I will never be an observer of the exterior of the place. When I'm an observer, I am calm and composed. But when I get locked into that wave, into the motion of that vritti or the thought pattern, then I become bound. The whole practice of yoga is to make us free from all this bondage of the movements and the agitations of the mind, free from all passions. The mind muddied with agitations, rajasic mind, binds man to the passions with attachments, while the same mind, free from passions, that is a satwik mind. Passion means no agitation, like not wanting this or that, not having any compulsive, obsessive compulsive behavior of wanting something compulsively, is a sattvic mind. It is the instrument to free man from all his inhibitions and perversions and takes him to the eternal abode of his essential selfhood. So, who am I is the self. The self is everywhere, the self is in everything, the self is the observer of everything, the self is non participating. Whatever happens, happens because of the self, but the self is not doing something. Everything happens. It is like the sun shines its light and all actions happen on earth. Like even Adi Shankaracharya says in the Viveka Chudamani, Tasman manakaranam asya jantoho bandhasya mokshasya cha va vidhane bandhasya hetur malinam rajo gunaihi mokshasya shuddham virajastamaskam. So what is bandha? Bondage is rajoguna. Rajoguna means constant action, constant dynamism, constant ambition, constant pursuit of something in this world for this and that. So if I am doing something so that I will get some result, then I am bound by rajoguna. And when I am bound by rajoguna and I act, the result is not going to be sattva-guna, but the result will be tamoguna. Tamoguna, because most rajas binds me and keeps me in tamas. Tamas means ignorance. What is ignorance? I do not realize that whatever I need, I already have with me. And I feel that only if I do this action, if I go out into the world and do this, do that, get this, get that, then only I am going to be free. Then only I am going to be happy. That is called tamoguna. And this mind binds us, a rajasic mind binds us and keeps us in tamas, whereas a sattvic mind liberates us with knowledge. Knowledge, what is the knowledge? That I am the self and I am present everywhere and in everything. I don't need to do anything to achieve something in this world. Whatever I need to achieve has already happened. This whole life is expanding before us. It is like the fan that keeps spinning. Even after you switch off the fan still keeps spinning. In the same way, our life process has switched off at birth. And whatever is happening in our life, in terms of whatever we receive, whatever we are supposed to do, whatever we are doing, and whatever is going to happen to us in future, is like that spinning of the fan. It will stop at its own time. But till it stops, whatever is already done only is going to come and express through in our life. And it is not something new that is going to happen. Unless we are a conscious creator of what we need to do in life. Unless it is a jnani or a yogi who's aware of his own self, for all common people, life just unfolds before them and they have nothing else to do but participate helplessly. It is an internal guerrilla war. The enemy is never out in the open. He ducks and hides, comes out, thrusts, devastates, and runs to hide again. We have to counter all these unexpected moves, surprise him in his own hideouts, and catch him in his own acts. Alertness and vigilance alone can promise a final victory, says Gurudev. Lastly, use the irresistible, mighty weapon of the true knowledge of the self. How do we come out of this process that is binding us in this life? Knowledge of the self is the only way. And until we reach that knowledge of who I am, the true knowledge of who I am, even now we have that knowledge, but it is not true and complete knowledge. It is only a partial knowledge. We can identify ourselves with the body and say, I am this body, which means we don't say I am the body, but we say I am so tall, I am so short, I am so dark, I am so thin, or I am so fat. And all these adjectives which are pertaining to the body, or we identify ourselves with our energy and say, I'm very hungry or I'm very thirsty. We are identifying with our energy systems, the prana. When we say, I like this or I like that, we are identifying ourselves as the mind. And we say, I have decided this. This decision has been taken by me. We are identifying ourselves with the intellect. And we say, whatever happened gave me so much of joy. We are identifying ourselves with the bliss self of ours, which all these five are not ours. They are just there for the moment to experience. Who am I in reality is the self or consciousness. And that is what Chinmaya Yoga is all about. Chinmaya Yoga is experiencing consciousness as one's own self. Yoga is, I am there as an individual, and whatever thought, feeling, emotion, object, situation, or person, whatever is there is outside of me. And yoga is the process of acquiring this and making it part of me. That is yoga. Chinmaya Yoga is, I don't need to do anything to acquire this, but I realize that I am the Chinmayam. I am that consciousness. And once I realize that I am consciousness, it is just a transcendental yoga where the objects and situations remain where they are. And I expand, I understand that I am that expanded personality, expanded self or expanded consciousness, which is prevalent in every nook and corner of this universe. There is no place where I am not. When I realize that, there is nothing for me to acquire, no place that I need to go, nothing that I need to do, or nothing that I need to attain. Everything that I need to attain has already been attained, and everything that I need to do has already been done. That is what whenever these Mahatmas, they speak about, whether it is Sri Rama or Sri Krishna, they say they are Krita Krityaha. Krita Krityaha means once you realize who you are, the true self, then whatever you need to do in life, the purpose for which you have been born here, you have already attained. Krita Krityaha. I have attained what I need to do. There's nothing more that is left for me to do. In the final analysis, mind is an inert matter layer, subtle and therefore apparently more powerful than the sense organs. Yes, yet it is good to realize that the mind is but matter, and matter is ever inert. The mind draws its strength from the self and then veils the very bliss domain of the pure Atman. That is even in the Viveka Chudamani, Sri Adi Shankaracharya says this very beautifully. Bhanu Prabha Sanjanita Bhra Panktim Panktihi Bhanum Tirodhaya Vijrumbate Yata Atmoditaham Kritiratma Tattvam Tatha Tirodhaya Vijrumbate Swayam. The clouds get their power from the sun, and drawing the very power from the sun, these clouds gather in large numbers, and to the spectator from the earth, the very sun that has caused the clouds to happen by its power of evaporation has the very clouds that have been caused by the sun seems to hide the whole sun. But when the clouds move away, the sun is shining bright. In the same way, the mind draws its power from the Atman. The mind draws its power from the self. And then it hides the self and makes us believe something else is only the self, which means the body is the self or the mind itself is the self. So this is what happened. Just like when we go into a dark cave, the cave is very dark, And the very darkness creates a lot of fears in our mind. The darkness caused by the cave creates more fears in the mind, and the fears make us, the fears themselves hide the darkness of the cave. In the same way, Shankara's pen deftly paints an example from nature. Just as clouds born of the sun's rays cover the sun, so the mind and ego, born of the self, veil the self and play as though there is no self behind them. Mind is also nothing but the self, and the consciousness of the self is a power from which the mind draws its strength to act and function. So, what does it translate into our day-to-day life? In our day-to-day life, whenever we feel tired, whenever we feel dejected, it is all happening because the mind is throwing up all these kind of feelings in us. The mind is only actually acting up. The mind is receiving its power from consciousness, but it hides that fact to us, and then it is showing up so many unwanted qualities like tiredness, dejection, depression, and all those. When we are faced with such situations, we just have to become alert and dive deep into that consciousness, which is our true self. And once we go deep into that consciousness and we emerge from it in the seat of meditation, the very mind that was disguising itself and not showing us the true power is dissolved, because we come out with the power of consciousness. And with that power, when we look at the mind, there is no mind in that place. The mind is absolutely not there. It is a negative approach to deny the mind its full and uncurbed freedom to do or act as it wills. A seeker must assume intelligently a get tough stance with the mind. When the mind is acting up, when the mind is showing itself off with creating all fears, tension, stress, and worry, that is a time to be alert and understand that the mind is playing its game, and then deny it that power. We are giving the power to the mind. The consciousness is the source for the mind's power. And when we are not aware of that consciousness, when we are not aware of how the mind is drawing its power, we are giving away the power of the consciousness. So it becomes like a Frankenstein, the devilish entity that we unawarely give power to. Then that very entity takes hold of us. Withdraw your grace from the mind. Withdraw your grace from your mind. It is a devil, Rakshasa, who has, through its tapas, invoked you and got your own blessings, and it is now threatening to annihilate you. The mind is acting up, the mind is showing up, the mind is creating all the disturbances that we face in life, all the difficult situations that we face, all the sorrows, the worries, the anxieties, the stress, the tension. Everything happens because it is the mind that is throwing up these thoughts. In reality, everything is beautiful, everything is calm, everything is quiet, and everything is happening beautifully in its natural place, natural pace. That is what is happening in reality. But whenever we see there is stress, there is tension, there is anxiety, there is jealousy, there is hatred, and all these things begin to show up, then we should be alert that it is the mind that is doing. So what do I do in that moment? Withdraw the grace from your mind. Withdraw the power that you are lending to your mind. It is a devil who has, through its tapas, invoked you and got your own blessings, and it is now threatening to destroy, annihilate you. Learn to destroy him quickly, hasten slowly. So how do we destroy? It is not about destroying the mind. It is about taming the mind and making it follow us very quietly. And there are many ways to do it. There are many ways. The way to quieten the mind is to withdraw the energy from the mind. How to withdraw? When you withdraw the energy from the mind is by relying in yourself as your own self, as consciousness. And to do this, there are many, many methods. One method is by forgetting the world, and the other method is by remembering the self. Remembering the self is through meditation. For forgetting the world, forgetting what is happening in front of you, There are many, many ways. The tamasic ways are to take some substances which will really cause nervous, it will shut the neural pathways to the brain. And because the neural pathways to the brain through tablets, through medicines, through drinks, and through certain kinds of foods, or constantly watching television, or constantly thinking about some sense object, or what I like to see, what I like to hear, what I like to taste, smell, and touch, constantly talking about food, engaging in some activity, constant being a workaholic, or all these are all methods to forget ourselves. But these are all not the methods that are mentioned by the shastras. When we take up ways which are mentioned by the shastras, our body, mind, and health will be safe. If we do things to forget ourselves which are not mentioned in the shastras, then we will hamper and disturb our own body and mind. So avoiding all those tamasic ways of forgetting ourselves, we take up satwik ways of forgetting ourselves. What are the satwik ways of forgetting ourselves? To do japa, constant japa, or remembering the name of the Lord, to write something, to engage in some sport, to engage in some creative work, to engage in service of society, and to engage in reading, writing, arithmetic, or engage in yoga, pranayama, or bhakti, or study of the scriptures, jnana. These are all the ways by which we can engage the mind, and through that we can forget ourselves. Otherwise, the other option is to constantly remember ourselves, which does not happen. To remember our true self, even if we have the knowledge, it cannot happen so easily at all points of time. So the other option works out very well because we are engaging in some action. So throughout the day, see to it that you are working on something, working on the mind, or and not working because of the mind, working not working driven by the mind, but driving the mind, steering the mind on its path of self-realization constantly. So there is a very beautiful Tirumandiram. Ullam perungovil ஊனுடம்பாலயம் வள்ளல் பிரானார்க்கு வாய் கோபுரவாசல் தெள்ளத் தெளிவார்க்கு ஜீவல் சிவலிங்கம் கள்ளப்புலனைந்தும் காளா மணிவிளக்கே. This whole body is a temple, and this whatever is inside the mind, the intellect, is the precincts of the temple for the person who is tellat telivark, for the one who clearly knows the self. The jiva or the life is the shivalingam, and all the five senses are the lamps of the temple. The lamps of the temple in the garbhagraha, they reveal the face of that deity, they reveal the face of that consciousness. And when we are in tune with that consciousness, we forget the world and we are in the self. When we have to remember the world in the right directions through the path of sattva guna, and then that memory of the world, the right memory of the world, can take us to the path of self-realization. And that is Chinmaya Yoga. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Bole Shri Sadgurunath Maharaj ki Jai. Hari Om.